The Scream by Edvard Munch. We're delighted to be offering at Sotheby's next Wednesday one of the great images from art history, but also one of the most recognizable images in our popular culture. One of 4 versions that Munch created of the Scream in the 1890s. The other 3 are all in museums in Norway. So it's a really historic opportunity for us to be able to handle this work, the only one in private hands, on behalf of Peter Olsen, who, as the heir of a Norwegian shipping family. And why is the Scream quite so famous, and how did this happen? Well, the works date from the 1890s. The first 2 are in 1893, ours created in 1895, and then there's a later replica from 1910. Why did it become so famous? Well, its celebrity in the first half of the 20th century was due to a number of printed versions, lithographs, many of them hand-colored, that Munch produced, which were disseminated around the world. But really after the Second World War, and what Munch didn't know in 1895 was that he was creating this image on the cusp of the most violent century known in history. And after the Second World War and its horrors, and in particular the Holocaust, this picture looked different to people. It became a seminal image, somehow very intense in a very economical, dense way. It managed to communicate the horror that was at the center of 20th century history. It becomes a talisman for the existentialists in Paris in the late 1940s. In 1961, it's famously used on the cover of Time magazine in this country, the guilt and anxiety issue. And gradually is duplicated and duplicated through all sorts of different media, so that when Andy Warhol in the mid-1980s, at the end of his life, produces his versions of the Scream, he's able to be using both one of the key images from art history, but also a key image from popular culture, in the same way that he might use an image of Liz Taylor, a Coke bottle, or a Campbell's soup tin. And there are very few images from art history where such a possibility is imaginable. Perhaps the Mona Lisa, which of course Warhol used too, is the only image which is more famous than this one. But it is generally accepted to be the most reproduced image in all of art history. The New Yorker told us that they get a couple of cartoons a week which use the Scream in some form or other, so they have a moratorium on those. They can't accept any more. Very difficult for the reasons that I've suggested. Its art historical status and its celebrity as an image. For those 2 reasons, very, very difficult to value a work like this. We've sold great masterpieces at Sotheby's in recent times for just a bit more than $100 million. Notably, the Boy with a Pipe that David Norman sold here in New York in 2004 by Pablo Picasso, but also The Walking Man by Alberto Giacometti, which sold for $105 million in 2010. So we know that there's tremendous appetite, perhaps more than ever, for great masterpieces today. We are feeling that this work could sell for in excess of $80 million when we offer it for sale at Sotheby's next Wednesday night, but we'll be very excited to see what actually happens. Only that evening will tell us.
Munch and his northern peer, Van Gogh, we so often romanticize their lives and believe in so much in the tragedy. We see these works as just spontaneous outgrowths of madness and despair. And Munch really was creating this for a very planned, envisioned cycle of paintings that were to describe the emotional states of man, love, anxiety, and death. And actually this image began as the coda, the end of love, which ends in despair. And the figure was originally a self-portrait of Munch looking out over the railing, contemplating the fjord and the city behind him, and then his struggle to create that into a more universal image and arrive at this sort of spectral figure representing mankind's response to the world was really one of deliberation, thought, sketches. So, you know, it's both the inspiration and spontaneity of genius, but also really the hard work of trying to conceive a new image for a modern age.
And it actually brings me to a final thought, which is One of the other distinguishing features of this work, of the four screams, aside from being the only one in private hands and the only one in this magnificent frame setting that I mentioned, it's also the most vibrant and immediate and colourful and energetic of the four works. If you look at the speed with which he's done the roadway there, it's almost sucking you into a vortex. But the other distinguishing feature unique to this scream is if you look at the two figures at the back, which from the poem he talks about, my two friends walked on ahead. Here, one of those figures has paused, and instead of getting a back view of him, we're seeing him actually looking out over the Oslo fjord, and you can just see, it's rather abstract, but the town of Oslo to the right there. And the reason Munch's doing this, perhaps there are two reasons. One is that he's dramatizing the poem. My friends walked on ahead, I stopped, and then I heard the great scream through nature, which if you read from back to front is what those three figures are doing. But also he's taking us back to the origins of the scream, which are in a picture called Despair, his first attempt to paint visually the epiphany or the experience that he had at Eckerberg.